All right, let's dive into an idea that's, well, it's going to sound a little crazy at first. What if the toughest, most painful things you've ever been through weren't just obstacles you had to overcome? What if they were actually your single greatest advantage?
I mean, really think about that for a second. What if everything you've ever been told about running from pain and chasing comfort is completely backward? What if those scars you carry are actually your superpower?
To really get our heads around this, we have to start by challenging something we all take for granted. We have to talk about empathy.
So here's the big provocative idea right up front. The kind of empathy where you just try to imagine what someone's going through, it's basically an illusion. It doesn't actually work. The source material paints this really vivid picture to explain it. Imagine a mother, right? She's trying to explain the unique, soul-crushing exhaustion of worrying about her son's speech development. People around her can nod, they can say I'm sorry, but they can't really get it. And then, bam, the person she's talking to says that one simple sentence, "My daughter didn't speak until she was over 3 years old." And in that instant, the whole conversation changes. There's no advice, no solution, just this shared understanding.
And that right there, that's what we're calling visceral empathy. It's the real deal. It's not something you can learn or imagine. You have to earn it. It's that deep, unspoken connection that happens when someone just knows you understand because you've bled from the exact same wound.
Okay, so if experiencing pain can forge this incredibly powerful bond, what's the flip side? What happens when we spend our lives trying to avoid it? Well, that brings us to a fascinating idea, the paradox of comfort.
You know, the philosopher Schopenhauer had this great little story about hedgehogs in the cold. To stay warm, they have to huddle together. But when they get too close, their sharp spines prick each other. So they pull apart, and they start to freeze. They end up in this miserable middle ground, just far enough apart to not get hurt, but just close enough to barely survive. Sound familiar? And here's the kicker, the real insight here. Comfort isn't a neutral state. Every single time you choose the easy path, you're not just taking a break, you're actively training your mind and body to be weaker, to be less prepared for the day that discomfort inevitably finds you.
Now, this isn't just some abstract philosophical idea. What if I told you that getting through tough times is literally a biological upgrade? Let's peel back the curtain and look at the actual science. The mechanism is a biological principle called hormesis, and you already get how this works, even if you've never heard the term. It's why we lift weights or get vaccines. You introduce a small, manageable dose of stress, and the body doesn't just recover, it overcorrects. It gets stronger to prepare for the next time. It's a super simple 3-step process. You apply a stressor, the body kicks into gear with an adaptive response, and the end result? You build real resilience. You've literally upgraded your own operating system. And I really, really want to hammer this point home. This is not a metaphor for personal growth. Surviving a true hardship physically rewires your neural pathways. It sharpens your ability to spot patterns. It gives you a kind of sixth sense that someone who's only read about the problem in a book can never, ever have. So this principle works in our bodies. But what's really wild is that the exact same logic plays out in a completely different world, the world of finance and investing. In finance, the holy grail is something called alpha. Basically, it's your edge. It's how you beat the average. But there's a famous theory that says if everybody has access to the same information and uses the same playbook, it's impossible for anyone to get an edge. Alpha disappears. It goes to zero. And this right here, this highlights the fundamental choice. You can follow the consensus, use the information everyone else has, and mathematically, you're guaranteed an average result. Or you can lean into a scares-driven strategy. You introduce information that only you have, and that's where the potential for real alpha, a real edge, comes from. Which leads us to maybe the most important question for anyone trying to build anything today. In a world where you can Google anything, where AI can process every bit of public data, what is the only true advantage you can have that no one can copy? The answer is so simple, but it changes everything. Lived experience. You can't download the lessons you learned from a failed business. You can't ask a chatbot to feel the empathy you gained from a personal loss. This is it. This is the last real competitive advantage. Okay, so that's the big idea. But how do we actually put this into practice? Let's get down to brass tacks with a really simple way to diagnose your own strategy.
Ask yourself this brutally honest question. The problem you're trying to solve, is it something you studied or is it something you bled for? Because if you only studied it, you're a commodity. You're competing with every other person who read the same textbooks. But if you bled for it, you are in a category of one. Your advantage is impossible to replicate. So how much of your strategy needs to be built on this foundation? Well, the source material suggests a target, a number to aim for, and that number is 70%. They call it the 70-30 rule. At least 70% of what makes you, your product, or your company unique must come directly from your scars. If it doesn't, you're not really differentiating. You're just playing in that crowded zero alpha market with everyone else. Okay, let's bring this all home. This isn't about glorifying pain or seeking out misery for no reason. It's about a strategic shift. It's about learning to embrace discomfort as a tool for building an advantage that no one can touch. The whole point is to reframe how you see your own history. Your scars aren't liabilities. They're a portfolio of incredibly valuable assets. Each one is a biological upgrade, a unique piece of information nobody else has, a source of trust that can't be faked, and a way to position yourself in a space where you have absolutely zero competition. And so we'll end on this one last thought. This is the final test for your work, your business, your entire career. Ask yourself, if a competitor would have to live through your worst moments to replicate your best work, then you've done it. You have created something truly, deeply, and powerfully irreplaceable. You've found your alpha.